Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and as a 36-year retired airline pilot, I'm going to tell you about passenger perceptions of safety and safety issues. A lot of passengers fear the wrong thing, and they don't fear things they actually should. So I'm going to talk about, as a passenger, what you should fear when you fly an airline, and what you shouldn't fear, what you don't need to fear. Now, airline travel is the safest form of travel. You hear that all the time, but when you see a car accident, it's usually not a spectacular fireball with, 300 people getting killed or something like that. But the last aviation accident in the US was on February 2009. And this was a crash of a Dash 8 Dash 400, a Q400. And I'm actually going to talk about this because I did a flight test on it. And I'm doing these in the order I did the flight test. And it's coming up here, but it's still a couple down the road. I did quite a few of these. But this was mostly attributed to crew error. They did not handle their sleep and commuting properly at all. Now, airplanes are not falling out of the sky. They simply aren't. They're very well built, they're very safe, and they're very dependable. Now, things have come a long way in airline travel. I have flown both of these aircraft pictured in this picture. That 777 on test flights and also in commercial service when I was an airline pilot. And I'd tell my co-pilots, I said, I've stalled this aircraft. And they'd go, what? You mean in the simulator? And I go, no, I've stalled this. And they go, you mean you got the stall warning? And I said, no, we took it right into the stall. And he goes, what? And I goes, yeah, it was in flight test. Don't worry about it. And I've also flown the Boeing 247. That was my last flight evaluation, if you will, at Boeing. That was kind of a gift from them. And they told me I am the only non-Boeing test pilot who has flown both of these aircraft. But if those of you who follow my channel, you know I've done a lot of flight tests, and the airplanes are severely wrung out. We do things in flight tests to test the airplanes that you do not want to be on board as a passenger. Just stuff that is not wonderful to do at all. And the aircraft have a lot of systems that passengers are not fully aware of. The capacity of the brakes to stop a 645,000-pound aircraft are absolutely amazing. And that's something that the passengers should be concerned about also. And I'll talk about that just a little bit later, why those brakes can cause you a problem when you're not aborting. But, it's not a complete science. We haven't solved all the problems. And when I talk about this accident where they encountered icing that exceeded the certification envelope, they became accidental test pilots and test pilots to an accident. These things can still exist. We're still learning, but still it's extremely safe. And the chances of these type of incidents are very rare, and I'll talk about that. Now, let me talk about some of the misconceptions. Those deadly propellers. Well, people assume that because an airplane has propellers that it's not as safe, and that is not true at all. But the funny thing about that perception is it caused a lot of the smaller airlines to get away from propeller aircraft. But stage lengths of 300 to 400 miles or less, they're just much more efficient. They keep the cost down. And the old joke is, will somebody take a safer flight? If the one flight is $10 less, they'll take it. But funny things can still happen. I mean, like on the Airbus 380, an amazingly well-designed aircraft, and one of my former committee members went over and actually became an Airbus test pilot and has experience in the 380, and actually he and Pierre flew it into Oshkosh one year. I don't know if you're up there to see that. Terry made a good point that Terry was not the one who did that landing. If you want to see a very interesting landing in a 380, Google that one. It's pretty interesting. It is what we call in airline terms as airline pilots an arrival. Now, airliners are amazingly strong, okay? And I talk about this TWA 841 incident. Now, how those leading edge slats got out, whether it was, crew messing up or whether there was a inadvertent deployment, I don't know if that's ever going to be solved, although, of course, people have strong opinions both ways. But this 727, and I love the 727, it is a solid aircraft like most airliners, and it went through some pretty horrendous parameters of G and airspeed, and it hung together. They got it on the ground. They had some damage, but the airplane stayed together, and nobody died. But you can still have incidents and events that aren't great. Now, you can have an uncontained engine failure. Well, I think this one actually did qualify as contained, but the shroud departed. And I've always kind of questioned that, and I'll talk about that in a second too, because these are big engines. But the point of the thing here, oh, an interesting little digression. See the shirt? I got to have a digression or I'm not faithful to the shirt. This is the same airplane that I flew on my very last flight, my retirement flight. And I'll show you it at the end of the little presentation here, that slide. That was about, my last flight was about, I think, 5 years before this occurred. But here's the important thing. You see that? That is at the gate. They brought the airplane back. They had, quite a, that's not a good failure there. I mean, you lost a lot of the cowling there. They don't flight test that much drag out there. And these airplanes are very streamlined, and you start losing parts like this, you got a lot of drag and you're heavy. And it was out of Denver, and I've flown that very trip from Denver to Honolulu. But it's hot, you're heavy, and that's a lot of drag, but they got the airplane back nicely. But there are some funny things that can happen in airliners that, are just one-off things that still end up okay. I talk about the Gimme glider here. They, this is the old thing. If you're going from English to metrics and you get a little confusion on what's going on, and they got an insufficient fuel load. And fortunately, they had a captain who actually had glider experience, which is very good. And I've flown gliders too. I can't say I'd like to land a 767 dead stick on an old racetrack, but he did get the guardrail there fairly nicely, and it was actually in use at the time. But nobody was killed on this one either, and that's pretty amazing. And there's been an amazing one like that, like United 232. I mean, a lot of people did die in that, but if that aircraft would have rolled over from 33,000 feet, nobody would have blamed the captain or the crew on that whatsoever, given the catastrophic loss of all hydraulic systems. And here's another one. I talk about this Eastern Airline flight. This was a maintenance issue where they didn't have O-rings on the magnetic chip detectors detecting metal in the oil, and the aircraft pumped out the oil out of all three engines, and they got it back safely. But of course, maintenance procedures, they continually evolve, and especially with the ETOPS, engines turning or people swimming, that's the extended two-engine over water situation. They're very careful on how maintenance is done on the engines and things like that. And of course, we have a lot of safety improvements with a ground prox warning system. We had a lot of incidents where aircraft, perfectly good aircraft, flew into terrain. And now we have really great warning systems that if a situation like this develops, the crew has sufficient warning to avoid the situation. Unless, I think it was Air Mexico where he made a comment of "shut up gringo" when he was getting a pull-up warning on it, but I digress. All right, and philosophy with air crews has changed over the years. We're away from the cowboy pilots. Okay, you listen to your crew, you interact with the crew, you bring them in. It's not captain is God and what I say goes. It's a very good working environment, and a lot of the incidents that occurred with cowboy captains and people not paying attention to the rest of the crew, they're pretty much gone. At least I hope they are. They should be, at least on major airlines. But you can have a good day and things can still go wrong. Now, let's say you're flying your retirement flight out of Los Angeles and you're going to Honolulu. This is the last flight you'll ever do. Well, second to last. I think he came back. But you're getting ready to take off, and you've got an issue with an underinflated tire, and you end up aborting, and two people actually went off into the fire that resulted, and they died. But I don't want to necessarily say other than that, but, the vast majority of people survived because aborts are very dangerous. They're very dangerous, but they are highly survivable. And you still have the one-off event, okay? Fuel icing, Little issue on the design of the engines and a filter, and I talk about this accident also with British Airways, and they almost made it to the runway, and nobody was killed on this one too. That's absolutely amazing. But let's talk about evacuations. Okay, sometimes you need to evacuate. Something goes wrong, you have an engine problem, stuff like that. Now, I was as a passenger on a Pan Am. Okay, that's how long ago this was. A Pan Am 747. I'm going from Kennedy. Used to be called Idlewild for you old people there, but Kennedy. And I'm going to Amsterdam to do a flight evaluation on a Fokker aircraft. I think a Fokker 50 or something. It was a long time ago. But we're at the gate, and they have this big ground cooling truck out under the wingtip. And it starts to catch on fire. And I'm sitting there in a window seat where I can see this, and I'm seeing the flames come up, and this fire is going pretty good under this wingtip. And they bring one of these huge, rolling fire canisters, which you've probably seen. It does not touch it. And the captain gets on the PA, and he starts announcing that we want everybody to get off on the forward door on the left there, the one you came in, and stuff like that. And as he's talking, the pitch of his voice is getting higher and higher because the flames are getting bigger and bigger. And I'm going out there, and the thing is, when they tell you to leave stuff behind, do it, because sometimes you have seconds to get off an aircraft, and I'll show you an example where later here where you want to get off the aircraft. Sometimes you just have seconds to get off the aircraft, so you want to leave stuff behind. Now, I was on the board of directors of Allegan Symphony Orchestra, and we have friends. Actually, one's coming over tonight. We're going out in the boat for a concert. I digress. We're going on a boat for a concert, and she's a violinist, and now I understand how these instruments are extremely precious. I didn't at the time, but she is trying to bring her cello, and I tell her, the lady, to leave it behind. Now, okay, I can understand, but basically, you need to leave stuff behind because you're impending the evacuation, and if things go bad, you may kill somebody. So you need to leave things behind, and we all got off the aircraft, and they pushed it back away from the burning truck, and the fire department came out there with the big guns, and they quenched this thing. But that was a bit exciting, let me tell you something. And let me tell you about a thing of evacuations. Now, this is something where passengers aren't scared when they should be. You see this? Other than smelly and gross, okay, if you want to take your shoes off, wait till you get up to cruise and get them on before you come into landing. Because if you have to evacuate and you're barefoot or you're in stocking feet, do you really want to go out there, especially if it's cold? Do you really want to go out the airplane and be running through the grass and rocks and all that sort of stuff? No. Keep your shoes on until the airplane is safely airborne. And the same goes on landing. You want to keep your shoes on, and you want to get off the aircraft successfully because, and this is a composite aircraft, and they probably burn a little bit better than aluminum, or at least more quickly. I'll probably get some comments on that. But you want to get off the aircraft expeditiously, and if you delay, you may prevent somebody else from surviving. So that's critical. But let's talk about those brakes again. I'm the tallest guy there, second from the left there. You see that truck on the 777 there? We're going up on a test flight, and those gear, that whole unit weighs 10,000 pounds, and there's two of those, and those brakes are absolutely massive. And what those brakes can do is absorb a horrendous amount of energy, because you got a 645,000 pound aircraft and you abort at 140 knots. And believe me, I have done flight test aborts, and normally you come in, you have a nice landing, a nice brake to a stop. Boy, if you abort, you're going in the straps, and if you're in the back without shoulder harnesses, you're going forward. These things just are amazing, the stopping ability they have. And you notice those are carbon brakes there. They can get just a little bit on the warm side. But let's look at that. Now, if you've ever seen the brakes on your car, you're lucky if you got one disc. Of course, a lot of the modern cars now, it's all fancy. You can see the little disc and the rotors in there, but these are multi-layered discs. They have disc after disc after disc after disc, and that can absorb a horrendous amount of energy. And Why that is important is because, and this has happened to me, in 36 years of airline flying. It's only happened really twice where I was pulling into the gate, and some guy in a baggage car is not paying attention. He's actually looking the other direction, and I was actually co-pilot on this because I was on the right side. He's looking the other direction, and he's coming under the nose of our aircraft. And I don't have time. I was co-pilot. I don't have time to say anything to the captain. I slam on the brakes, and I mean, we stop immediately. Some people get in a little hurry, as you're coming up to the gate. That's why the announcement, folks, we're not at the gate yet. Please keep your seatbelts fastened until we safely get the gate. Yeah, because if you have to do one of these stops, the aircraft stops instantly with those brakes. You're not going 145 knots. You're only going a couple miles per hour, and when you engage those brakes, you're stopped now. Of course, you're probably going forward at 10 miles per hour or so or less, and your body isn't stopping unless you're belted in. You're going to go forward. You could hurt yourself, and it can be really bad. Now, sometimes you have to dump fuel. It's really not. It's not a big deal, other than for environmentalists. And I was coming out of Beijing. We had a problem. We had to dump 200,000 pounds of fuel. It took a little bit over an hour. They actually did a meal service in the back just because we were going to spend such a long time dumping. And the funny thing was, we probably improved the air quality in China. If you got anybody been to China, it's just dreadful there. This is why you want pollution controls, because it is just unbelievable. But the funny thing is, instead of going out over the ocean, they had us actually go over farmland. So we were joking that we were putting oil on their dressing out there because it was very green, and we were just sitting there dumping away. All right, as I said, these engines are big. That's me on the right side there, standing in the engine. If and this is one of the smaller engines, the Pratt and Whitney 4077s, I think it is. If I lift up my arm, it was still 17 inches to touch the top of that cowl. That is a big engine. And see those blades? Those blades are big. And there's a picture of me, pilots stand in front of their airplanes next to the engine and stuff, put their hands on the props. Well, I couldn't quite touch the blades, but those suckers are big. And if one of those comes off, yeah, that cowling can separate. As you saw it can damage it. And the vibration can be extreme. There have been cases where pilots have had a loss of a blade, and it shook so much they could hardly read the instruments. You got to get the thing slowed down, get it down. Even when you kill the engine, it's still going to windmill, so it's still going to shake. So it's going to get your attention. The aircraft are built to take it. In fact, the pylons, if it's so bad that the pylon can actually separate from the aircraft and the engine will go bye-bye. And, that happens a lot in KC-135s in the military, or 10 times or so. I think I knew the history of it, of slinging engines, they call it, when they had an issue. But, I digress again. But anyway, you lose a blade, it is going to shake the crap out of you. All right. Well, your airline crews are good. We go out every few months, and almost 4 decades, I went out to the training center there at United Airlines, and we go through everything. I mean, it gets to the point that if you have an engine failure or another emergency, it's so routine. You have done it so many times. It's just you go through the drill, and now with these nice electronic checklists, it is such a piece of cake. And I actually had the opportunity. This was fun. I never got checked out in the 787 with my retirement in 2015. It didn't work out when we merged with Continental. They had the 787s. We had the 747s-400, and there was a fence between the two. I would like to, but my son flew it. And he had an opportunity to get me a little bit of free stick time out there, and I've done some videos on that. But the 787 is, I wish I would have gotten to fly it. That is an absolutely amazing, beautiful, and from the passenger standpoint, immensely comfortable aircraft. But we go out to the simulators and we do this stuff. And we go through all the procedures, and you know it like the back of your hand. And we just go through the training. So the modern airline crew is immensely well trained. What about bad weather? Well, that's not really that bad. I mean, over the years, it used to be, well, do you want to take off into the thunderstorm or not? Well, no. We don't do that anymore. ATC shuts things down. You don't even get the chance to push weather anymore. And we know the history of thunderstorms, wind shear, and stuff like that, and we avoid them like the plague. We keep wide spacing, and if they're there, we don't fly. Now, as far as low visibility, we've got amazingly good instrumentation, and it's actually a lot of fun because everything works so well. And I've had approaches where I've touched down before I've seen anything, where you have the Cat 3 auto land. If you want to get good Cat 3, 0-0 practice, bid Frankfurt in the spring, because that's where I got all my Cat 3 approaches. In fact, that I think it's runway 25 right. They build a hotel off the end of the runway at 25 right at Frankfurt, and you'll pass over at about 800 feet on final. It was months before I actually saw the aircraft, saw the hotel when I was coming in on final. I mean, I saw it when we were going out to the hotel. We went by it, but the weather was so bad, I never saw it in actuality on approach. Now, here's the fun thing. People say, oh, I'm 30,000 feet in the air, and that's scary. No. That has nothing to do with it. Yeah, it's minus 65 degrees out there, and you can't breathe. And, if you move from the window seat 4 feet left, you're going to die. You got a huge wind, it's cold as can be, and you can't breathe. But fortunately, you're 4 feet over, and you don't get that. But let's say you have a medical problem. I'm doing a polar flight over to Beijing, I think, from Chicago. And the nice thing about that is when you've got some 300 plus people on the airplane, you're always going to have a doctor, typically. In fact, you can have several doctors. In fact, it can come to the point where I have to work on which specialty of doctor do I need, because you get good volunteers. But we had one where this woman was in distress, and she was diagnosed with either an ectopic pregnancy or a panic attack. And I thought, that's a pretty wide variation, isn't it? So we're up over the poles. We're coming into Russia, and we're a good ways into Russia. And I tell my co-pilot, I say, well, what medical diversion stations do we have? And he opens up the flight operation manual, and that little red column there, you look down there, and first of all, you got places in Russia that if you have to go in there, that is a dire emergency. We have a little E and a big E, and there are some diversion stations, typically in Russia, and of course we don't, with all the fun that's going on in Ukraine right now, and the relationship between us and Russia, we don't go overfly Russia anymore. But at the time we did, and we actually had good relations with China, of all things, when I worked. So I got all sorts of cheap crap there. But anyway, at the time, some of these diversion stations you just didn't want to go into because you would have not gotten the airplane out. I mean, we're not even talking taking all the seats out and stuff. It was going to have to be hauled out on a truck because it was just an absolute emergency field. But I said, what do we got for medical diversion capability? And he just starts laughing. And we turn the page, and you can see the little MED there, and there is just virtually nothing. And it comes to the point, well, we're talking to the doctor. Actually, I don't directly talk to the doctor. They talk through the sat phone to our medical facilities back in O'Hare. I mean, they got amazing capability to bring doctors on board. And we have a medical kit on board. They have defibrillators now. They have a medical kit that is truly amazing, that, you have to make sure that you're actually talking to a guy who's a real doctor, not one who plays it on TV. You get to see the medical credentials. They have to fill out a form, but basically you can release this medical kit, and this is a pretty amazing medical kit. You can't do open heart surgery, but you got a lot of stuff there. But basically it came down to, well, I hope this lady survives, because it doesn't look good for going any place. And I'm not going to take the aircraft into a dangerous station and risk the lives of 300 some people for a possible medical event. I'm sorry, but I wish you the best of luck. And she ended up just walking off the airplane. It's amazing the number of times I've had calls on what were possibly medical events, and they turned out not to be nothing. Of course, that's not always the case at all. And I talk about one where the guy walked off my airplane and died, which I didn't know about till a little bit later. And I talk about that episode on another video somewhere. But anyway, okay. The medical situation when you're going on a long flight, there's a lot of parts of this world that are very desolate, especially when you go over the poles, because that's your best fuel usage conservation type stuff. So when you're going over the poles, there's a lot of places that you just can't go. I remember when we would come back into Russia, and we're getting back into Russia, and we're finally starting to see little things of cities and stuff, and I'm starting to feel that we're getting back into civilization, although we're in parts of Russia that they send every people they don't like. Now I'm going to tell you about just a couple more incidents here before I finish up. The one is the good old lithium batteries in laptops. Now, this is something that could bring an aircraft down. These fires are extremely hard to fight, and my son was head of the Dangerous Goods Committee, and they got a lot of these even more types of dangerous lithium batteries prohibited from being on a cargo aircraft, and actually we lost a couple of cargo aircraft due to these battery fires. And they can be extremely dangerous, and they're virtually impossible to put out. They are self-generating, and they are just bad. And this is something that, with faulty chargers and faulty batteries, this is still an ongoing issue and something to be concerned about. And every once in a great while, we have a problem with this. Now, one more thing I'd like to comment. You're sitting there, you're watching your movie on your portable electronic device, and you're not sitting in your living room, okay? Let's get that straight. You are not sitting in your living room. You are moving forward at 600 miles per hour plus. You are moving at 800 to 900 feet a second through the air. It does not take much of a disturbance to cause a big deviation in your flight path. And as I tell people, I say, keep your seatbelts fastened the entire time. When you go up to the bathroom, fine, but otherwise keep them fastened because there are two dangers. I said there's the danger of you coming out of your seat, hitting the ceiling, and also the danger of you falling on a person who is strapped in. And I tell people that, you want to keep your seatbelts fastened so you don't go flying out of the seat, or you don't have somebody else fall on you. And there have been a couple of recent incidents with some fairly nasty turbulence. And as I know, climate change doesn't exist, right? But we get some pretty strong jet streams. And if you want good tailwinds, guess where they flight plan you near? They plan you near these jet streams, so to take advantage of that, and that's where the turbulence can be. So no, you want to avoid those areas. Because it can be a real mess for the cabin crew to clean up. Now, one little point of interest, if you're going from Chicago to Hawaii, you're going at 600 miles per hour, which is about what the Earth rotates at. So basically, when you take off going west, that's why when you fly that wonderful little trip for 9 hours, the sun hangs right there in the same spot in the windshield for the pilots. Not for you guys in back, for the pilots. But you are essentially traveling at the speed that the Earth is rotating, especially at the 60-degree latitude, which you're at. So you're holding still, and the Earth is just rotating under you until you get Hawaii below you, and then you go, it's time to go down. We'll go down there. And that's when you start to slow down, and the sun actually goes down. But anyway, I digress there. That's a little thing about, how the world turns. You should make a soap opera on that. So anyway, there's the airplane that later had the engine cowl separate. But that's my final flight out of Maui, coming home with my family after a nice 36-year airline career. Never killing anybody. Had one flight attendant injured due to turbulence. It had to do with one of these galleys on the 727 in the back. They have these plates that go in it. If you don't get it just right, we hit some turbulence, and that cover came off and went right down and hit her toe and just broke the toe. I mean, you had this thing falling from about 4 feet right under her foot, and you can't ask for a worse situation like that as to something that's going to break your toe. But anyway, those are the things that people are concerned about that aren't really an issue, things that they should be concerned about and they aren't concerned about enough. And like I said, it's still the safest form of transportation, but we're not perfect yet. We're still learning. There will be new things that come out in the next decades that people probably never anticipated or slightly anticipated, but it is getting to be a mature science and process, and hopefully it will continue to be the safest form of travel. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.